Welcome to another episode of Coach's IDP Studs and Rankings. I'm the coach and want to go through some IDP stuff going into week 4. For the first thing we want to try to talk about today is kind of waiver pickups after a lot of injuries have started from the first 3 weeks, and some guys that you want to put on your fantasy teams to help with your scoring and the process of winning games. Again, a reminder from last week, we talked about do not chase tackles or interceptions. You can't really tell who's going to be the guys that are going to be in those situations from the get-go. So, you just want to take the best player usually on the team that defensively is probably going to be on the field more so than the other opponent. So there's some guys that this week that I'd really like you to take a look at if they're not on rosters to consider adding to yours through the waiver wire. And linebacker Nicholas Morrow from the Philadelphia Eagles is my top guy this week as a waiver ad. His name came up a couple weeks ago about filling a spot when Nakobe Dean went down with an injury. But he has kind of become a guy that's in the middle there for the Eagles who are making some plays and putting up some really good IDP points. I think I've talked about this young man for all 3 weeks going into the 4th week, but Brian Branch, if he's on your waiver wire, pick him up. He is a strong safety, ball hawk guy, plays close to the line of scrimmage on rundowns. I mean, he finds the ball, makes plays, and puts stats on the board for your IDP teams. Obviously, with the injury to the Cowboys defensive backfield, with Trey Diggs going down, Donovan White is probably the next man up. He was out the first 2 weeks with an injury of his own, but now that spot is open and he's healthy, he's probably a pretty good ad coming off your waiver wire also. David Long Jr. from the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins are dinged up a little bit across the front line and linebacker area, but he's been consistent all year, and I noticed in one of my teams that he is still on the waiver wire, so he would be a nice pickup to add as a third linebacker or somebody maybe possibly for bye weeks that are going to start up here in a couple weeks. So, and then the 5th guy is Robert Spitland from the Las Vegas Raiders. He has quietly put a good year together already, and being a linebacker, he's around the ball. I think he's got the green dot on his helmet now. He's making the calls for the Raiders defense. So if he's on your waiver wire, he would be somebody also to look at. Some of the reasons why these guys are available are some injuries that the guys, some high valued guys have been dinged up and, have caused us to, scour the waiver wire quite a bit. So Nick Bolton, Chiefs linebacker, did not play last week. We'll wait and see what the word is for him for this week. But, he's, I think, my 3rd ranked linebacker in my IDP linebacker rankings. So, a lot of teams have him out there. And if you have to put him, on the IR, or if you have to sit him out, you got to find somebody that can at least, give you some stat points for replacing Bolton. Derwin James, did not play, kind of dinged up. He's my number 1 a defensive back, and for the Los Angeles Chargers. So, looking for secondary help. Also, there's some guys out there that I really like, especially the rookies. If you wanted to look, down the IDP rankings for the defensive backs, there's some guys there that I think you could add who had really a nice last couple weeks and are your point guys. Sometimes the defensive back's misleading because, if you're such a good shutdown corner and they don't throw your way and you're one-on-one with a receiver, you're limited on your stat numbers. So you need to take a look at that closely and see who is, guys that are, close to the line of scrimmage, help with run support, guys that are in the right areas, covering the people that teams are going to target, and go from there. So that's just kind of a little hint that I've always used. You've got for an example, Revis, who played for the New York Jets for so many years, really wasn't a very good IDP player, but he was an outstanding Hall of Famer defensively. So, you sometimes you got to play the game with your mind and not your heart. We all have favorites, and just make sure that you're, trying to fill the stats as much as possible. Jalen Phillips, talked about him a little bit with the Miami Dolphins, kind of dinged up a little bit. He's a stand-up defensive end linebacker. So with him being out, that's where David Long, steps in and gets, some more tackles, some more, maybe forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, something like that. So that kind of helps hand in hand. Frankie Laville from Carolina, he got injured during the game, I believe, for Carolina. So it's something we got to kind of watch with him. He's really had a nice season so far, getting dinged up a little bit. And, it's, the injuries that you so much that you don't have an opportunity to play at 100%, which gets your production down a little bit. So, and the last one is Devondre Campbell from the Green Bay Packers. He, got dinged up a little bit also. So we need to keep our eye on him for, going into this week. And I believe they play Thursday night tonight. And so we'll know pretty quick when that injury report comes out. So let's go over some of the point totals, to this point after 4 weeks or 3 weeks going into week 4 of, our top IDP players. There's, a couple of these guys that are no-brainers for me. TJ Watt, again, is having a great, outstanding season. He's got 63 total fantasy points after 3 weeks, and that's, huge numbers. 21 points a week he's averaging is huge for your defensive side of your fantasy football team. Zaire Franklin, we've talked about him a little bit, linebacker who has kind of taken over the leadership role there for the Indianapolis Colts. 46.4 in 3 weeks, pretty good number. Donnell Hunter is having quietly a really good season also. The defensive end, outside linebacker for the Minnesota Vikings with a 43.9% or points after 3 weeks. Micah Parsons, he comes in at 41.2. I think a lot of people are starting to run away from him. He's getting double teamed now, and they're doing some things to kind of limit him on the defensive side. But that's just him being the player that he is. Um, Javon Howland, who is a safety for the Miami Dolphins, has kind of quietly slipped up into the top 5 here. He's got 41 total points in 3 weeks. So that's somebody that probably is on your waiver wire that you could also pick up. Terrell Bernard, linebacker for Buffalo, has stepped in there. Has 24 total tackles, 38.1 points after 3 weeks, which really is, good for a young guy that's probably wasn't a starter week 1, but has filled in for injuries and game situation stuff. So, he's somebody that probably is also on your waiver wire. Myles Garrett comes in number 7. He's got 37 points. He's a wrecking machine. When he comes around that end, quarterbacks need to make sure that they have, that time clock going on in their head, because he's coming, and if he gets to you, he's going to make the play. So. Here's a guy that also might be on your waiver wire. He's picking up some action, especially after the Monday night game for the Cincinnati Bengals. Dax Hill, safety, at 36.3. And I think he was a guy that rotated in the first couple weeks, but I think now he's found a starting spot in the Bengals secondary, and he's going to be somebody that's going to be around for quite a long time. And then number 9, Matthew Judon, linebacker for the New England Patriots, comes in at 35 points after 3 weeks. He's another one kind of in the same realm as Michael Parsons, where, a lot of teams are game planning to run away from him, or double team him and run right at him, to try to make to take care of him on the defensive side. So, a couple of the things I'd like to discuss a little bit with you. There's some guys that are in the rankings that, now that we're going into week 4, have really, moved up and kind of solidified a spot, whether it's in the top 10, top 5. I moved a few guys around. I think we talked about it last week, because of where they line up percentage-wise, whether they line up at a linebacker position or if they line up as a defensive end, or, if some guys are playing that nickel safety, which could also be called a cornerback, if they're in a one-man coverage. So some guys have moved around, so I encourage you to go to the IDP rankings. That's, and again, that's all my opinion on the rankings, but, I feel, pretty confident that they're pretty close to what other people have, and have the right guys, in the right area. What I have seen this year is I've seen a lot of dominant defensive tackles, which, normally they're, the fillers, and they don't get a lot of the points and stuff. But, when you talk about Quentin Williams for the Jets, and Aaron Donald obviously is consistent for the LA Rams. Now you got DeForest Buckner, who has really stepped up this year for the Colts, making plays right and left. And then, we've got the Georgia defensive line, who is playing for the Eagles. It's kind of funny when they, talk about that group with so many Georgia Bulldogs on their defense. But it's they're good players, and they're in there for a reason, and they're making plays, and that's just something that everybody's looking for is playmakers. No matter whether they're playing defensive tackle or they're playing cover corner or they're playing middle linebacker, whatever. But we're always looking for those playmakers on both sides of the ball. Um, let's talk about a little bit about the rankings. I'm going to go to my ranking page here, and I encourage you to send in some questions to the Twitter page. It's IDP underscore Studz, and that's my Twitter page. And if you have defensive questions, I'll try to answer them as quick as possible and get that information out to you. But I like to answer questions. I like to kind of sit through, what other people are thinking, what other people are saying. And I'm always willing to hear good advice from other people. It's we're all in this, to do the very best we can. Sometimes it's just for fun. Sometimes it's competitive in a money league. But other people's opinions on players, they're good, and some of them are very helpful to myself, or also very helpful to other people that are involved in these type of leagues. But let's talk um, let's talk a little bit about the defensive line real quick here. We my rankings wise, I've got Micah Parsons, T.J. Watt, Nick Bosa, Max Crosby, and Myles Garrett as my top five. Um, Probably no surprises. Those five could probably interchange whatever order that you like for your own personal opinion. Some other guys that have kind of moved up and stayed up in the top 10. Chris Jones, another defensive tackle. I was talking about defensive tackles a little bit ago, but he is just he's a monster in there. Makes a lot of plays. And we saw the difference that he made from week 1 to week 2 for the Kansas City Chiefs. So he's sitting there at 6 for me. Hassan Reddick for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think he's listed as a defensive end linebacker. I've seen him at defensive end quite a bit. And then this past, I believe, Monday night, he lined up at the linebacker area spot quite a bit. So we'll just kind of wait and see, where he falls in consistently. But he's a playmaker no matter what position he's in. Aiden Hutchinson, he is really, really coming on strong. Being a second-year player. We knew with him being drafted as high as he was that he was going to be a good player. But when you really look at him and watch the highlights and stuff, the small things that he does really makes him on that top level defensive end spectrum. And he's got a couple guys, I believe, that are still a little bit ahead of him, but it's not going to be long before Hutchinson breaks that top 5 going forward. Matthew Judon, we've talked a little bit about him with the Patriots. He's in there at a defensive end. He's also a slash linebacker. And Kayvon Tedible, defensive end. He's had 2 back-to-back really good weeks, here for the Giants. It's hard to kind of say the Giants have, got a a stud on their defense after a lot of the points that they've been giving up. But Kayvon has really improved, and I think he's figured it out to where he's going to be a dominant player from here on out. Talk a little bit about linebacker rankings. Foyesade Olakon is still my number one linebacker for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's just consistent player, puts up the stats, puts up the numbers, and makes all the plays, for Jacksonville. Number two, Roquan Smith. He's again. I think he's ranked, very high in my IDP overall rankings also. So linebacker for Baltimore. And then talked a little bit about Nick Bolton and his injury, but he's still at number three. TJ Edwards for the Chicago Bears. Ziar Franklin. We talked about him, so he's top five now. San Francisco's got some really good linebackers. Dre Greenlaw, he has filled in nicely and really is a nice player for San Francisco. Pete Werner for the Saints. And Jack Campbell, another rookie, has moved up in the top 10. He's a linebacker for Detroit, and I encourage you to watch him also. He's somebody that's going to move up even more real quick as the season goes on or into his second year next year. Fred Warner, another San Francisco linebacker. And one guy that really impressed me the other night, Monday night, was Logan Wilson. I thought, he did enough for me to get him in that top 10. When I watched him play on Monday night for the Bengals. All right, let's move on to defensive backs here. Derwin James, safety. We talked a little bit about him being injured, but he's still the number one defensive back for me. Minkah Fitzpatrick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Antoine Winfield Jr., Tampa Bay. I think they both were in the top three, 2 and 3 last week also. Jalen Petrie, safety for Houston. Little change at number 5 here. Kyle Duggar for the New England Patriots is just steady, really good open field tackler. Is around the ball. He's covering the number 2 guy for each team, so he's a guy that's getting the stats. When it comes to the New England secondary. Tulanga Hufanga, safety for the San Francisco 49ers. Just really reminds me a lot of, Troy Polamalu. And it's not because of the hair, it's because of the way he reads the play and comes downhill and is a big playmaker on special teams, is always around the ball when it's on the ground, picking up fumbles or knocking the ball loose. So just consistently a really good defensive back there. Jaquan Brister for the Chicago Bears, got dinged up a little bit on Sunday, but I think he's going to be okay. So he's in there at number 7. Jalen Thompson, safety for Arizona, and quite frankly, Arizona's defense has kind of kept them in some games here, especially against Dallas. Winning that game. There were a lot of plays made on the defensive side for the Cardinals, and Thompson was a big part of that. Number 9 is Kyle Hamilton, safety for the Baltimore Ravens, and finishing out the top 10, Cameron Curl, who is also the other safety for the Baltimore Ravens. I think their secondary is really one of the top defensive secondaries in the league. So, but check those out. Let me know if you agree, disagree. Send me some questions if you'd like, or comments. We want to definitely keep it clean, but I'll be more than happy to get back with you and go from there. So I want to thank Fantasyholics for allowing me to do this and put this on their Facebook page. And you can listen to this sometime this evening or moving on into the weekend, and hopefully you can pick up some good waiver wire guys, cover the injuries that you may have, and have your defense help you win your week and move on and win your league. So hopefully this was helpful. Again, I appreciate your listen, and please follow me at IDP_Studz on Twitter. I appreciate it, and have a great day. Thank you.